Beloved by drivers and fans alike, Istanbul Park, home of the Turkish Grand Prix, has been absent from the Formula One calendar for some time, with only 2 appearances since 2011, both taking place under difficult circumstances. But what makes Istanbul Park so great? And why isn't it on the calendar more, given its status among drivers and fans? Let's find out. The 5.3-kilometer circuit, situated in the Tuzla district of Istanbul, Turkey, was designed by Hermann Tilke. Work started on the circuit in 2003 and was completed 2 years later in August of 2005, ready for the inaugural F1 race that year. Government funding and private investment resulted in a $40 million complex of pit buildings and grandstands, relatively cheap by the standards of F1 circuit infrastructure today. Thanks to this investment, plenty of grandstands, hospitality and entertainment areas, the circuit boasts a capacity of over 125,000 spectators. Unlike most of the circuits that Formula One goes to, Istanbul Park is anti-clockwise, with Imola and Interlagos being the only other anti-clockwise tracks on the calendar at the time. The circuit was initially intended to run clockwise, but Tilke quickly realised that the alternative would be far more interesting and challenging. Tilke deviated from what was starting to become the norm for his track design with Istanbul Park, long straights ended with tight hairpins. Instead, putting far more emphasis on fast sweeping corners and making extensive use of elevation changes to create a track that often resembles a roller coaster. The very first corner of the track perfectly encapsulated the elevation changes throughout the track. Dubbed the Turkish corkscrew due to the similarity with Laguna Seca's famous corner, a 90-degree left hand then drops in height significantly before leading straight into turn 2, which rises back up again around the sweeping corner. Turn 8 is perhaps the most famous of the circuit, effectively being 3 corners all rolled into one. A challenging, high-speed, multi-apex corner that tests both driver skills and the aerodynamics of a car equally. Istanbul Park held its first Formula One race on the 21st of August 2005. Kimi Raikkonen, driving for McLaren at the time, took the circuit's maiden pole position and led every one of the 58 race laps, cruising to victory at the new venue. 2005's Turkish Grand Prix did not disappoint. The circuit immediately showed itself as a premier venue for racing, with on-track action throughout. Turn 8 proved to be every bit as challenging as expected, with Juan Pablo Montoya making a critical mistake in the closing stages at the corner, losing second place to Fernando Alonso in the process. Drivers and fans were unanimous in their praise for the circuit, with Bernie Ecclestone, the then boss of F1, going as far as to say that it was the best circuit in the world. The following year saw Felipe Massa take the first of 3 consecutive wins in Turkey, making him the most successful driver ever to race at that circuit. If you're enjoying the video, please consider giving it a like and hitting the subscribe button to see more F1 content just like this. The 2010 Turkish Grand Prix is perhaps the most well-known race to take place at Istanbul Park. Mark Webber took his 4th pole of the season, with Sebastian Vettel, his teammate and title rival, taking up 3rd place on the grid. Early in the race, the McLaren of Hamilton pressured Webber, the two racing hard up to the first pit stops. An undercut by Vettel pitting the lap before, combined with a mistake during Hamilton's pit stop, put Vettel into 2nd place. Vettel saw an opportunity to overtake Webber, who was conserving fuel at the time, pulling alongside him during the long run down to turn 12. The two made contact long before the braking zone, damaging Webber's front wing and sending Vettel spiralling off of the track. Both drivers ended up in the turn 12 runoff. However, Webber was able to continue to the race while Sebastian was forced to retire. Opinions on who was to blame differed, but senior Red Bull members, specifically the often controversial Helmut Marko, laid the blame squarely at the Australian's door. This gifted the lead to Lewis Hamilton and McLaren, with his teammate Jenson Button in second place. The drama didn't end there, however. Hamilton was instructed over the radio to conserve fuel so as to make it to the end of the race, being told that this instruction was to both cars. Button, having not been given a target lap delta to stick to, attacked Hamilton, briefly taking the lead. A lap later, Hamilton was back in the lead and began to pull away from his teammate, securing a 1-2 for McLaren. It was a masterclass in driving from both McLaren drivers after being gifted the win by Red Bull. Webber eventually finished in third place, some ways down from the lead two cars. Despite the initial success of the Turkish Grand Prix, crowd numbers dropped significantly every year after. The average wage in Turkey is far less than the price of a ticket, contributing to the decline in numbers, along with Turkey not having much in the way of motorsport heritage to help push it along. Drop-off in ticket sales and attendance was so severe that in 2007 the circuit ended up for sale, with none other than Bernie Ecclestone himself purchasing the circuit for $120 million. This made Istanbul Park a direct subsidiary of Formula One, and Ecclestone himself claimed that this would secure the circuit for the next 14 years, theoretically ensuring the race on the calendar until 2021. Unfortunately, crowds continue to decline, and Ecclestone's investment and promise to keep the circuit on the calendar couldn't save it in the long term. 2011 ended up being the final race of Istanbul Park's initial run in Formula One. It was a race that saw a new record for the number of overtakes and pit stops in a dry race. A fitting send-off for the race perhaps, but simultaneously making it all the more disappointing that this undoubtedly fantastic track was leaving the calendar. The race itself nearly didn't even happen. Ecclestone reportedly wanted to double the fees for hosting the race, which would have ensured it didn't happen. This, ultimately though, was the cause of the Grand Prix disappearing off of the calendar. It was announced in July of 2011 that due to hosting fees being too high, this year's race would be the last for some time. Plans were initially drawn up to race back on the calendar for 2013. However, this would have required $13 million in investment from the Turkish government for this to happen, something that they declined to do. When the COVID-19 pandemic hit, Formula One made the decision to postpone the start of the 2020 season, and subsequently rescheduled or cancelled many of the races that season. When some races couldn't be rescheduled, Liberty Media, who had been in control of F1 since 2017, made plans to host Formula One races at alternative circuits once the season resumed, to maintain as full of a calendar as possible. Istanbul Park stepped up and hosted what ended up being the 14th round of the season in mid-November. The track had been recently resurfaced, which, due to the pandemic and short notice of organisation that year, meant that Pirelli was unable to test tyres for the track to bring appropriate compounds for the race. This was further exacerbated by heavy rainfall that took place over the weekend, leading to an incredibly slippery track. Lance Stroll took pole position and led a great deal of the race. Ultimately, however, Lewis Hamilton took the top spot of the podium and secured his 7th World Championship in the process. The race returned the following year under similar circumstances, with Valtteri Bottas taking pole and leading most of the race. As of right now, 2021 was the last time that Formula One raced at Istanbul Park. Over the years, it has been linked with several returns to the F1 calendar, though other than the pandemic, none materialised. The circuit received new owners earlier in 2024, and once again, talk of the track making a return has risen. It's currently unknown whether the fan favourite track will make another return, but the new owners of the circuit are reportedly aiming for a 2026 comeback. What did you think of the Turkish Grand Prix and Istanbul Park? Is it one of your favourites, or are you happy for it to stay off the calendar for now? Let us know down in the comments. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to see more videos just like this. Thank you for watching.